Okay, here are the two tents side by side. On the left is the Big Agnes Copper Spur Platinum 2. It's quotes ultralight, end quotes. It comes in, I think, I don't know, 42 ounces. So it's light, but not that light. We used on the AT last year, we used a Big Agnes Copper Spur Platinum 3. We liked it. I actually got another one, but it is a very fragile tent, so you do have to use a ground cloth with it, and you have to police the area really well. We put a couple of holes in the bathtub that were not repairable. This one is easy to set up. The tabs on each corner and the poles are color coordinated, orange and white, so they're actually easy to see at night. It doesn't have as much room as I thought it would. What this tent does is it narrows at one end, as you can see. I'll have to sleep at the upper end if I do decide to take this tent. You cannot actually use this tent without the tent and just the fly. It's called a fast fly. You can really anchor this thing down. I like that the fly comes down close to the ground, so splashback when it rains hard doesn't get into the tent. The two disadvantages to this tent are weight, obviously, and the fact that the materials which two-wall tents are made out of absorb water. So after a heavy rain, this tent is going to be a lot heavier than 42 inches, or 42 pounds, 42 ounces, sorry. Excuse the fact that the tent is not as tall as it should be. Getting the spike, the tent stakes into the ground in Texas is difficult. There's only about 2 inches of topsoil, and then there's rock, and you can see a lot of them are pulling out already. But this tent, if it does get wet, will carry a lot of weight. It won't dry out as quickly. And it is obviously a tent that you got to take that fact into consideration. The other tent is the one I've just set up here. Again, excuse the pitch on the tent. I just set this up for the first time. Last summer we used a triplex, which to me was a little bit easier for some reason to set up, but it may have been due to the fact that I can't get the stakes to hold. This is obviously a single wall tent. The advantage to a single wall tent is, one, it's going to be lighter, but two, it is a lot easier to put up and a lot quicker to put up than a double wall tent. The other advantage is this is made out of what was called Cuban fiber, I think it's now called DCF. It does not absorb water, it sheds water, so you shake this out and it will dry fairly quickly. The disadvantage to a single wall tent is that they are prone to condensation. If you're out on a night where the outside air is cold, the outside part of the tent gets cold, the inside part of the tent, wall of the tent gets warm because of the people in the tent, and you get condensation on the walls. If you can create a little ventilation by leaving a door open, one of the vestibule doors, you can combat that. In my experience, and I've done a lot of winter camping, any tent, whether it's two wall or one wall, is going to have condensation if the conditions are right. It's very cold outside, and there are one or two people in the tent. The difference is that unlike a one wall tent, the condensation actually forms on the fly and not on the tent itself, so it's less likely to drip inside. But during some winter camping, I've experienced situations where it has gotten wet inside from condensation. Now, on this tent, on the Zpacks, what it's supposed to do, and you'll notice the 4 floats, I have a hack that I'm going to use to try to reduce that. You'll notice over on the left there, there's mesh between the bathtub and the wall of the tent. That mesh is supposed to be an exit point for condensation that runs down the wall. However, for some reason, and I'm not certain if this is the way it's supposed to be, the bathtub floor is raising all the way up to meet the wall. And I've got to just check with Zpacks as to whether I made a mistake in setting the tent up. I just don't remember this condition when we set up our triplex last year, and we used it 4 or 5 times. The other thing that's a little bit of a concern, and I've got to fiddle with, if I decide to go with this tent, I've got to fiddle with the setup, is the vestibule, you can see, is a little higher off the ground than the big Agnes. I think if I move the stake closer to the pole, because this is a trekking pole tent, I will reduce that gap, because again, I'm a little worried about splash back. One of the biggest disadvantages to this tent, which is a sort of a royal pain in the butt, is locking up at night, closing up your vestibule. There's no zipper on this tent, so it requires somehow that you're able to reach in here and latch this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some toggles on the inside and some Velcro on the both flaps of the tent, and hopefully that will help. The lack of a zipper, obviously decreases the weight, but it, I always struggle with opening the vestibule doors because they're only secured by that toggle, which is on the outside, particularly with cold hands. The other thing I don't remember from the triplex are these 2 little rings right here. There's 2 on the other side. Again, they may be for additional guy lines in windy conditions, so I've got to check with that. So I'm going to do the hacks that'll keep the floor down from floating around. But once you have your sleeping bag in and your pad and your pack, it isn't really an issue, unless you're camping during a hurricane, which I don't intend to be. The tent poles are supposed to be at 48 inches, which is 122 centimeters. I've got them at a little less. I may increase them again. I want to fool around with it and see how it works and what works best, what distance, what length works best. I considered, Zpacks makes a pole set, which comes in at about 10 ounces. I considered getting that, which, you don't need to use your trekking poles to set it up, and you may get I may buy it, and just to see how it works and whether you get a really better pitch on the tent. But other than that, I like the Zpacks tent. I like the triplex. Like I said, we used it 4 or 5 times in the Sierras last year. We did not use it on the AT. We used this tent's big brother, the 3. But they're both great tents. The difference is weight. There is about a pound difference between the 2 tents, maybe a little bit more. So that's it. If anybody has any suggestions or can answer any of the questions to help me improve my pitch, again, I think some of the pitch issues here are due to the fact that the stakes are all pulling out of the ground. And hopefully I won't have that problem on the AT. That being said, take care. Please subscribe, hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, or if you didn't like it, a thumbs down. Take care, have a good day, and hopefully see you on the trail.